The tension in the air today is something you can almost touch with your hands. From the bustling streets of Aba to the quiet, heavily guarded roads leading to the Federal High Court in Abuja, the entire nation is holding its breath. We are witnessing a moment that could define the history of the Southeast and indeed the security architecture of Nigeria for the next decade. The headline screaming "Final Judgement" has sent shockwaves through social media, WhatsApp groups, and market squares. But as we dive into this story today, November 20, 2025, you are going to realize that what is happening inside that courtroom is far more complicated, far more dramatic, and far more dangerous than a simple guilty or not guilty verdict. To understand why today is so critical, we have to look at the man at the center of the storm, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. For years, he has been the face of the agitation for the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. He has been a ghost in the machine of Nigerian politics, incarcerated, yet his influence dictates the movement of commerce and people across 5 states every Monday. Today was supposed to be the end. Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court fixed this date, November 20, 2025, to deliver the final judgment on the terrorism charges brought against Kanu by the federal government. But there is a massive twist that has thrown everything into confusion. A legal chess move that might just shatter the government's plans. Just days before this D-Day, specifically on November 12, 2025, Nnamdi Kanu's legal team pulled a move that stunned the prosecution. They filed a fresh, urgent appeal at the Court of Appeal in Abuja. They are effectively saying to the higher court, stop the lower court. Do not let Justice Omotosho drop that gavel. Why? Because they claim the very foundation of this trial is rotten. They are arguing that the law Nnamdi Kanu is being tried under, the Terrorism Prevention Amendment Act of 2013, no longer exists. They claim it was repealed and replaced by the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2022. Imagine being on trial for breaking a rule that has been wiped out of the rulebook. That is the argument Kanu is making. He is saying, you cannot try me on a dead law. This legal battle has turned into a game of high-stakes poker. On one side, you have the federal government, desperate to close this chapter. They have called their witnesses, some of whom testified behind screens with their faces masked, fearing for their lives. The prosecution, led by the senior advocate of Nigeria, Adegboyega Awomolo, closed their case in June 2025. They believe they have proved that Kanu broadcasted hate, that he incited violence, and that he ran an unlawful society. They want a conviction today. They want to tell the world that the law has taken its course. On the other side, you have Nnamdi Kanu, who has refused to speak in his own defense. Think about that for a second. A man who is known for his oratory prowess, a man who can speak for hours on radio, sat in court and said nothing. Why? Because he told Justice Omotosho that he has lost confidence in the court. He argued that the court refused to force the Department of State Services, DSS, to give him access to his lawyers and documents to prepare for his defense. He said, how can I defend myself when my notes are seized? How can I defend myself when I'm tapped and monitored every second? So he folded his arms. He let the 6 days given to him for defense expire without saying a word. And because of that silence, Justice Omotosho ruled that he had waived his right to defend himself and fixed today for judgment. Now, let's take a trip to Umuahia, the capital of Abia State and the home of Nnamdi Kanu. If you are in Umuahia right now, you know the atmosphere is different. The Abia State Commissioner of Police, Danladi Issa, has not slept in days. He knows that whatever happens in Abuja today will echo in the streets of Abia. He has deployed heavily armed police officers to strategic locations. The Isiama Afaroku community, where Kanu's family house is located, is under surveillance. The message from the police is clear. We are ready for anything. CP Danladi Issa was quoted just yesterday saying that Abia is safe, but his men are out 24/7 to ensure no breakdown of law and order. They are expecting reactions. They know that if the judgment goes against Kanu, the emotions of the youth could boil over. But it is not just the police who are worried. The Ohanaeze Ndigbo, The Apex Sociocultural Group of the Igbo people has come out with a strong warning. They are terrified that today could be hijacked by bad elements. They have issued statements distancing themselves from any planned protests. They are telling the youth, do not go to the streets, do not give the security agencies an excuse to shoot. They claim that some political elements, people who want to destabilize the Tinubu administration, are trying to use Kanu's case to burn down the country. They are calling for calm. They are calling for a political solution. This idea of a political solution is something we really need to talk about. For years, elders, governors, and even international bodies have whispered to the federal government, release this man, let him go as a gesture of peace. They argue that you cannot shoot your way out of an ideology. They argue that keeping Kanu in the DSS cell only makes him a martyr and fuels the sit-at-home enforcement that is destroying the economy of the Southeast. But the government has refused to budge. They insist that the law must be blind, that nobody is above the law. This is where the story gets even more painful for the average person living in the Southeast. The economic cost of this trial is unquantifiable. Every time Kanu appears in court, businesses shut down, schools lock their gates, markets that feed millions are turned into ghost towns. We are talking about billions of naira lost, not because of a strike, but because of fear. The fear that if you step out, you might be labeled a traitor by the unknown gunmen enforcing loyalty to Kanu. Today, as the court sits, many shop owners in Onitsha, Aba, and Enugu are watching their phones, wondering if they can open for business tomorrow or if the judgment will trigger another week of lockdown. As we continue to unravel the layers of this complex story, if you are finding this breakdown helpful and you want to be the first to know the minute the judge drops the gavel, please do me a huge favor and smash that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. It really helps us keep digging for the truth and bringing you these detailed updates without the noise. Now, let's go back to the extraordinary rendition. You cannot talk about today's judgment without remembering how Kanu got here. Remember 2021? Kanu was in Kenya. Then suddenly he was in Abuja, handcuffed and blindfolded. His lawyers call it kidnapping. They argue that bringing him back to Nigeria without an extradition hearing in Kenya was illegal. In fact, the Court of Appeal agreed with them in 2022. They discharged Kanu, saying the government broke the law to bring him to court, so the court had no jurisdiction. But the Supreme Court later overturned that, ordering him to face trial. That yo-yo of hope and despair is what has frustrated his supporters. They feel the goalposts keep moving. Today, Kanu is also fighting for his health. His team has raised alarms multiple times about his heart condition and his potassium levels. They claim the DSS medical team is not equipped to handle his complex health issues. They have used this to beg for bail, but every single bail application has been shut down. Justice Omotosho has been firm. You are a flight risk. You jumped bail in 2017. We cannot trust you again. The memory of Kanu fleeing the country after the military raid on his home in 2017 is the ghost that haunts his bail chances. The judge sees a man who ran away. His supporters see a man who narrowly escaped assassination. Two different realities clashing in one courtroom. So, what are the possible outcomes today? There are three main scenarios. Scenario 1, the final judgment happens. Justice Omotosho ignores the pending appeal, reads his judgment, and convicts Nnamdi Kanu. If this happens, Kanu could be sentenced to years in prison. This would likely trigger an immediate appeal to the Supreme Court, meaning the legal battle continues, but Kanu remains a convict in the eyes of the law. The reaction on the streets would be unpredictable and potentially volatile. Scenario 2, the technical knockout. The judge acknowledges the pending appeal at the Court of Appeal and decides to stay action. He might say, since the Superior Court is looking at whether this trial is even legal, I will wait. This would mean another adjournment, another date, another cycle of anxiety. For the government, this is a delay. For Kanu, it is a lifeline, buying him time to fight on the technicalities of the repealed law. Scenario 3, the shock release. It is unlikely given the government's posture, but the judge could look at the lack of defense, look at the repealed law argument, and rule that the prosecution failed to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt because the foundation is faulty. If Kanu walks free today, the streets of the southeast would erupt in jubilation, but the security agencies would be on high alert to ensure it doesn't turn into chaos. The drama is also playing out internationally. Kanu holds British citizenship. His family has constantly called on the UK government to intervene. They accuse the British of abandoning their citizen. There have been protests in London, letters to the Prime Minister, and debates in the UK Parliament. But diplomatically, the UK has been very careful not to upset its relationship with Nigeria. They watch, they observe, but they do not interfere. This silence hurts Kanu's camp deeply. They believe that if he were a British citizen of a different background, the reaction would be different. Let's pause and think about the humanity involved here. We are talking about a man who has been in solitary confinement for years. He is allowed limited visitors. He sees only the four walls of his cell and the courtroom. Whether you love him or hate him, the psychological toll of that isolation is immense. And on the flip side, think of the families of the security agents who have been killed in the southeast during this crisis. The police officers ambushed at checkpoints, the soldiers killed on patrol. They too are victims of this saga. Their families are also waiting for justice. Today's judgment is supposed to be for them too. It is a clash of pain, the pain of a marginalized region feeling unheard, and the pain of a state trying to maintain order. The prosecution has painted Kanu as a mastermind of terror. They played audio clips in court where a voice, allegedly Kanu's, called for the heads of politicians, called for the burning of police stations. They argued that his words were not just speech, but loaded guns. They say that when he spoke on Radio Biafra, people died on the streets of Imo and Anambra. To the state, he is dangerous because his words turn into action. To his followers, he is a prophet who spoke the truth about marginalization, and they believe the violence is a result of the government's heavy-handedness, not Kanu's orders. As we inch closer to the moment the judge sits, the question on everyone's mind is, can this country afford to keep Nnamdi Kanu in prison forever? And conversely, can it afford to release him without conditions? The political solution proponents say release him to the Eastern governors. Let them guarantee his behavior. Let him go home and calm the youth down. But the hawks in the villa argue that releasing him now would be a sign of weakness. They say it would encourage other agitators to pick up arms, thinking they can negotiate their way out of trouble. It is a deadlock, a stalemate that has lasted too long. And today, Justice Omotosho has the difficult job of interpreting the law in the middle of this political firestorm. He has to look at the Terrorism Act of 2013, look at the 2022 Act, look at the evidence, and make a decision that will be scrutinized by legal scholars around the world. I want to hear from you. You are the jury in the court of public opinion. Do you think the 2022 law repealing the 2013 Act should automatically set Kanu free? Or do you think the government will find a way to keep him regardless of what the law says? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think a political solution is still possible in 2025, or has that ship sailed? Keep your eyes glued to this channel. As soon as the court clerk reads the first line of that judgment, or as soon as the lawyer steps out to address the press, we will bring you the update. The police in Abia are watching. The presidency is watching, the world is watching, and we are watching with you.